course I'm muted. 0 days. 0 days. 0 days, Josh. Hi guys, it's Kathy. I hope you're doing well. Alright, we have the speed correct. We are like at video 310 or something crazy like that. 311. Crazy, crazy, crazy. We're on the stand talking about a freaking shoe. Not about murders. But we saw the company that made this show. We saw the molds that made this show. We saw the press that presses the molds together to make the shoe. We saw how they attached the shoe, the sole, to the shoe, because that's really important on whether O.J. Simpson committed murder or not, guys. Very, very, very important. So let's go on and see maybe if we'll see exactly how the laces are made. Who knows? What if this guy's on the stand for a week? Okay. Fine.
Display behind you of People's Exhibit 56G and tell us if there are any footwear impressions in that exhibit that you can correlate back to our chart on the Bundy Drive.
Yes, in the lower right-hand corner of the display, there is a heel impression, and that heel impression is the same heel impression which was at the corner of the front gate, which I had called Q68 on the chart on the Bundy board.
And on the Bundy board, you had that oriented in a southerly direction, but somewhat points to the west.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, directing your attention to the next exhibit, which is People's, this is also a graphic photograph, Your Honor, 60 for identification. Are there any shoe wear impressions in that photograph that you can see and correlate back to our exhibit?
There are, but they're very hard to see in this photograph. The same impression that I just mentioned is at the center of the screen, about just above the midline. And it's actually, if you were to extend the finger of the person pointing outward, it would point pretty close to it.
And that would be Q?
That would be Q68.
And can you tell us the general area? If you can't see Q67, this resolution just tells the area.
Yeah, Q67 is located over near the envelope. Again, pretty much in the center of the screen, but a little bit to the left. The corner of the envelope, which is closest to the bottom of the screen, you can see some pattern, and that is the area of the Q67 impression. And it's oriented in such a manner that the front portion of the shoe would be over into the soil area.
And the third photograph, Your Honor, is also a graphic photograph. It's People's 45B for identification. Okay, is that 45B?
No. We have Mr. Fretlow doing double duty today.
They changed it while I wasn't looking. Mr. Bodziak, on 45B, can you point out any other footwear impressions and correlate them to the Bundy Drive chart?
Yes, on the second step, in front of the area where you can see the toe of a white shoe, there is the impression which was called impression A, which was a sole of a left shoe, which was headed in the westerly direction. That would be on the second step.
And now taking a look at 45C.
By any chance, did the video resolution just change?
45C.
And did it get better?
Again, first looking at the second step where the toe of the white shoe is, again, you can see impression A, and then going up one more step, more toward the top of the picture where the leaf is, you can see what I have marked impression B, which is more to the other side of the step, and then coming toward this side, down toward the bottom of the screen, very, very lightly, you can see one of the, it's a right impression heading back down the step, very light, which is one of the last ones that I demonstrated. That was the photograph, which I call Q1 22, which contained both the left and right very light impressions, and it was taken at an angle, not with the ruler.
Okay. And now looking at people's 45F for identification, can you tell us, generally speaking, what shoe prints or shoe impressions are indicated in this photograph with respect to the chart?
Well, we've skipped a few feet since those steps, but it's basically down this walkway that impressions E, F, G, H, I, so forth are as you look away off into the distance heading in a westerly direction.
And there was a part of your
Thank you
testimony
very
this
much for
morning where you
talking
were
about
testifying
every
about
single,
L and M
each
and where they were in
individual
relationship
footprint.
to some shrubbery
Thank
that you
you.
saw in photographs that were taken on June 13th. Can you tell us where that shrubbery is?
Yeah, the shrubbery is
Twice.
the shrubed area
Thank
to
you.
the right of the picture, beyond the railing. And in about the center area of that shrubed area is a tall, thin tree. And that's the tree I
So
was
were
referring
there
to that at the
bloody
time I went
footprints
was
at the
leaning
scene?
across the
Yes.
sidewalk. But as you
Did
can
they
see
match the
in
defendant's
pictures that I
shoes?
checked, it was
Yes.
in a normal
No further
position.
questions, Your
And
Honor.
that area is a couple feet deep, and it is that area where that taller tree is kind of in the center of the shrubed area on the right that the impressions L and M come out of.
And were those impressions oriented so as to be west or towards the alley of the shrub or east towards Plenty Drive?
The L and M were oriented, as you look at this picture, to your left, which would be a southerly direction.
South of the shrub.
Yes.
But were they directly in line with it, or were they east or west?
Of which part of the shrub?
Of the, let's say, the center where the trunk of it would be.
They're pretty much in the center area.
Okay. And there's a series of 3 steps that we can see in this photograph. There appears to be some sort of a metallic object up there. Where is that in relationship to our chart?
That would be up here, beginning with S and T and U.
Okay, and then further back on that second plane of tiles would be where X and Y were as well.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you. You can resume the witness stand if you like, Mr. Boziak. And, yeah, and I'm going to return to it in a little while. We can take it down for a few minutes.
That's fine.
Now, when you were examining these various shoe prints that we've discussed at the Bundy location, did you take a look to see whether there were any wear characteristics on the shoes?
Yes, I did.
And what is a wear characteristic?
A wear characteristic is, a general term for wear is it's the frictional forces acting against the sole of the shoe that cause that shoe, the rubber of the shoe, to wear away. And in doing so, the design or pattern, of course, will eventually change. And that change can also be noticed in the footwear impression. In other words, you can distinguish a new shoe of a particular design with ones which now have wear and which the design is beginning to change in.
What, if any, conclusions did you come along those lines in your analysis in this case?
All of the impressions that I examined from the Bundy scene, where you could see the design clearly, reflected a shoe that was in a relatively unworn condition. Unworn to the extent that the design had not yet started to change.
So was it either new or relatively new then in your judgment?
It could be anywhere from new to moderate wear to where the shoe design was still pretty much intact in the
Hadn't
Bundy
begun to
scene,
change.
where you could see the design.
And by new, I should probably clarify, are you talking about when it was purchased or just the wear, you know, how frequently or often it was worn?
Well, when you're talking new, to me, that means the shoe is relatively unworn. It could be a shoe that's several years old that just
Okay.
was never worn.
All right. Now, of any of the shoe prints that we've discussed that are distinct shoe prints, in other words, where you were
Man, I
able
have
to
no
label
idea.
them as either
None.
right or left with the pink or purple colors that we use to signify those, were any of those inconsistent with the Silga sole?
No, none of them were. Every one where you could recognize the design corresponded with the size 46 Silga sole, or in the case of those last two, which were not, of which the photograph did not have a scale in it and was taken at an angle, and they were very faint. They I could associate with a Silga sole, but not a particular size.
And with respect to the distinct shoe prints, Was there anything inconsistent in any of them with being European size 46 or American 12?
With regard to the distinct impressions where I could make a determination of size, all of them were either a left or a right European size 46, and I could exclude sizes 42 through 45 and 47.
Now, with respect to the indistinct shoe prints, was there anything to indicate that the indistinct shoe prints were made by a size of shoe other than 46?
Well, I couldn't determine size from the indistinct prints. There was nothing to indicate that they were a different design. In other words, I could not see any design in those prints because there was such little blood, they were so faint, that I couldn't say it was or was not the design. I couldn't say anything with regard to your question.
All right, now I'd like to go back to the first part of the Bundy chart, which is People's 387A for identification. And direct your attention to a few of these indistinct shoe prints. Let's start with the one that was labeled K, which you previously discussed. If you need to step down to me. Now, Mr. Boziak, keeping in mind what you previously told us about how shoe prints are deposited at a crime scene and when you were talking about how they become fainter and fainter,
Yes.
is there anything to indicate whether shoe print K, the indistinct, was from a design other than the Silga sole?
There's nothing to positively indicate that because you can't see the design that's in that. It's too indistinct. But there could be inferences that it was not another design simply because in order to have a light impression from footwear in blood out in this area, there would have to be some impressions preceding it that were darker because they had more blood on them. And so it would not be possible for a person to step in blood, leave no distinct impressions, and then out in the middle here, which is somewhat far from anything, just leave one indistinct impression unless it was the same shoe that was going down the sidewalk, the Silva sole, and leaving that just a faint mark that you couldn't really examine.
Would your answer be similar with respect to the other indistinct shoe prints? For example, the ones that generally occur between O and AO on this diagram?
Generally, yes. With regard to AG or AH through AO, those are impressions where, if I might get the sole again, as you go down a step, the foot is just rolling over the corner of the step, and it's squeezing out a little remnant of blood, and there's no real impression, so to say. So those are just blood that are on the edges of the step. And so these I wouldn't really be able to comment about because they're not a typical impression. But nevertheless, since all of these preceding it are indistinct until you get back to the Silga soles, the deduction from that would be a strong inference that this was the Silga sole, and the reason why these become indistinct is simply the blood had worn off sufficiently to where you can no longer see this kind of detail.
So would it be a fair summary of what you just said, just going back to K for a moment, just for illustration purposes, that if that were of a different design, you would have expected to see a distinguishable or distinct impression prior to that time of that different
There would
design?
have to be other impressions that were darker, yes.
Okay. Thank you. You may resume what you're saying.
All right, Mr. Goldberg, do we need,
No, I think so. Now, sir, in performing the analysis that you did in this case, did you also have occasion to look at some photographs of police officer, of the shoes of police officers?
Yes, I did.
And I'd like to direct your attention to what we've previously marked as People's 73 for identification. And I'd like to mark as People's next in order. That would be People's 296 for identification,
how about 396?
396. What appears to be several photographs that were DA discovery number 4381. Similar to 63. So I'm going to show you what we've marked as 73 for identification. Can you take a look at that to see whether you looked at the pictures of those shoes?
Yes, I did.
And now also showing you a series of 6 photographs that we've just marked as people's 396 for identification. Did you also look at those prior to taking the witness stand today?
Yes, I did.
And with respect to these 2 exhibits, were you able to include or exclude the officer's shoe prints as having created any of the prints that you saw at the Bundy location?
I was able to exclude those officers' footprints as having made any of the distinguishable, the Silga design that I've pointed out previously this morning. That Silga design is totally different than any of the designs of these officers' shoes.
And just for the record, the package of 6 photographs that I sent, it just showed you, included Phillips, Furman, and Roberts.
That's correct.
Let me just put them on the Elmo quickly. Just take a quick look at those, and Mr. Bodziak, can you confirm whether those are the ones that you saw and excluded? Can you just move those around so we can see all four of them on the front? Thanks. That's fine. Mr. Bodziak, are those 4 photographs the one that say Phillips up at the top, and then Furman, and Furman again at the bottom?
Yes, they are.
And can you turn that over just so we can see the reverse side? And the Roberts photographs?
Yes,
Look at
that's
those.
correct.
And I'm not going to ask you all about all the ones in 73, but let's just look at Officer Risky's shoes. Can you pull back so we can see the name? Thanks. Did you look at these shoes, the ones of Officer Terrazzo, the pictures, and the pictures of Officer Risky?
Yes, there's far more detail in what I looked at than I can see here, but those
Okay.
are the same photographs.
All right, and you excluded those?
Yes, I did.
All right. Thank you. Now, in your experience, have you learned about something or heard about something called stride or gait analysis?
Yes, I have.
And what is that?
Stride or gait analysis is a person's gait is the distance between their left and right footprints as they walk in a straight, normal fashion. It takes into account not only the distance between each footstep, but if I might use these, the angle the toes are out when they walk. Some people walk like this, some people walk fairly straight, a few even walk toed in. And so all of those characteristics, the angle of the toe in and toe out, and the distance between the footsteps is what's generally referred to as stride analysis or gait analysis. This is not a tool which is used forensically for crime scene photographs, but one which is used by by trackers, such as the Border Patrol, that track people from point A to point B. And they use this, or have knowledge of this, because when they first see the first few footprints that they want to then track, they will take a stick and measure the angle and the arc and the distance that approximately falls between each of those footprints. And they will use that as an indicator of where they might find the next mark, whether it be a crushed leaf or a broken twig or something, and that's how they track, and they use that as an assistance in tracking from a person from point A to point B. In a crime scene where there's close encounters and abnormal movement of people and struggles and other things going on, you don't have this normal walking from one point to another. So it's not useful as a forensic tool for personal identification of a person.
In terms of figuring out how tall they were, how fast they might have been
That's
moving
correct.
precisely. And in your experience, is it in fact difficult in the crime scene context to try to use the stride or gait analysis to figure out exactly how they were moving or leaving the crime scene?
It is, I have never had a case or known of a case where for a close encounter at a crime scene, because of the erratic behavior and other factors, that could be useful, but it's only used for tracking purposes.
And when you say tracking, that's something that to try to find someone.
If a
figure out
child
where
is
they-
lost in a state park, they may get a tracker to try to follow their footprints in, or if a person is coming across the border, or just I've had cases where trackers have tracked people from point A to point B that in other aspects of the case, but not related to the close-in crime scene comparison.
Now, shifting to another topic, In addition to the footwear impressions that you talked about at the Bundy location, did you also look at some footwear impressions on items of evidence?
Yes, I did.
And starting with the Bronco carpet, did you have occasion to see the Bronco carpet LAPD item number 33 for identification?
Yes, I did.
And where was it that you saw that?
I saw that at the Los Angeles Police Department laboratory.
On what date?
I believe it was September 1st, 1994.
Was anyone present when you saw it?
Yes, present initially were Greg Matheson of the Los Angeles Police Department. There was 2 representatives from my laboratory to assist in the photography. Do you want names of everyone?
No, it's okay.
Oh, okay. There were 2 representatives of the defense that were present, and there were 2 other observers from the Los Angeles Police Department laboratory who stood in the background just to observe the procedure.
And did you see Mr. Matheson take any cuttings or samples from that item in your presence?
Yes, I did.
All right. Now, before getting into the photograph of the item, just if we can put up the tail end of the Bundy board again.
Yes.
Sir, if we were to assume that there were a Bronco parked at the tail end in the alley area of the crime scene, given that we don't have any shoe impressions on this part of the board other than 116, what would account for or explain how impressions could get on the Bronco carpet?
Could you? You're saying that the Bronco would be at the end of the driveway in the alley area?
Right.
Okay, and the blood would have been picked up back at the front gate area where the majority of the blood was. Okay, if I might use the sole again, as I have previously gone over, I believe before, the surface areas of the shoe that commonly come into contact with, whether it be a tiled walkway or the driveway, by that time the blood would have been worn off of those areas. And there still could be blood, though, up in the crevices and grooves of this, which had not yet dried or worn off. And so that if a person were to get into a vehicle with an item of carpeting, when they stepped on the carpeting, you could have a situation where the blood, as the carpeting was pushed up into these grooves, the blood was pulled out and left on the carpeting. But it would not be the same kind of impression that you would get with a lot of blood on the shoe, leaving a track such as we discussed earlier today.
Excuse me for interrupting you. The jury has asked for a brief break.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 10-minute comfort break. Remember all my admonitions to you. We'll resume in 10 minutes. Quite a sideshow going on outside. The bomb squad apparently is opening up right now a car in the parking lot, and they found a safe in the trunk of the car, and they were using one of those carbide circular saws to cut the safe open. Nothing, just entertainment for the afternoon, that's all. All right, let's have the jurors, please. All right, Mr. Boziak, would you resume the witness stand? All right, good afternoon again, Mr. Boziak. Mr. Goldberg, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Boziak. Before continuing with the Bronco carpet, I just wanted to clarify when we were talking about stride or gait analysis. Was it your testimony that one of the things that made it easier for trackers to do this, that they're going over relatively long distances and seeing numerous shoe impressions as opposed to a crime scene?
Yes, the tracking I was referring to was, the examples I gave were, for instance, a missing child in a state park. Obviously, that wouldn't be just a few feet. It could be miles, and the same would apply to the other reasons for tracking.
Okay. Now, getting back to the Bronco carpet, I'd like to mark as people's next in order. It's 397 for identification. Another chart that's entitled Bronco carpet.
Bronco carpet.
It's a good title.
Catchy.
Appropriate.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Bodziak, perhaps you could step down, and using this chart, can you tell us what you did in trying to make an analysis to determine whether there were any footwear impressions on this item of evidence?
Yes. On September 1st, I came to the Los Angeles Police Department and examined this carpet, and I was asked to attempt to enhance, that is, make it easier to see, the blood impression, particularly this area here, but any other area of the carpet as well, that might contain some blood and possibly a shoe impression. And by doing so, I first treated the carpeting with what's known as a fixative, and that is so that when the subsequent enhancement solutions contact the blood that's there, it will not run away and just dissolve, but will stay in its fixed position on that respective area of carpeting. I then treated the carpeting with luminol. Luminol is a material which reacts with a substance in the blood, and it must be done in total darkness, and that was photographed. And when blood reacts with luminol, you get a luminescence or a glowing in the dark, in layman's terms, and that was photographed. And then subsequent to that, I treated the carpeting with a material called leucocrystal violet, which also reacts with material in the blood, but which turns a crystal violet color. And that is now seen, since it can be done in normal light, that was photographed, and you can see the entire mat, as well as the enhanced area. That is now seen as a dark violet area of staining, and there's a lot of little drops, but also primarily this area here, which is the entry point to the Bronco. In other words, if this door is opened, this is the part that you would step up into if you were getting into the car, into the Bronco.
And did you look at that area where a person would step up into if they were getting into the Bronco?
Yes, and before I treated the carpet with any chemicals at all, I examined the photographs which were taken immediately upon the acquisition of the Bronco, as well as the current condition of it, and you could see the reddish-brown staining in this area, but not as clear as it can be seen now.
Okay, so both of the photos that we're showing here, do both of these show the carpet in its enhanced condition?
Yes, this is after the total enhancement process. To your right on the chart shows the whole piece of carpeting that had been cut out of the driver's side on the floor, and to the left is an enlarged area to natural size of this approximate area, the area where the feet would be if you were sitting in the seat.
Okay, can you now tell us, and if you need to use either an overlay or a shoe to do this, one of our shoe soles, can you tell us what you did in order to try to make a comparison?
Well, as I had mentioned before the break, the blood, after going down the long walkway across the driveway to a possible car that was parked there, would not have an imprint in it from the bottom of the shoe like it would have further back up the sidewalk, but instead it would have had blood that was up in the areas or grooves of the shoe between the design elements, and possibly blood that was wedged in crevices between the perimeter or even around the edge of the shoe, and would have therefore still survived that distance that far along. And what I did was take a test impression in a transparent form, such as I have previously showed, and I tried to position it different ways over the impression where you would normally step up and enter into the Bronco, to see if I could get any of the features in this enhanced impression to correspond with the sole-to-sole, such as I had with the other comparisons that I made. And I was not able to take an overlay and actually reconstruct the exact position of that shoe to the point where I could say it was absolutely the Silga design, and even go farther and say it was the same size. There just wasn't enough detail, and of course it's not representing the normal design of the shoe, but it's just wherever there happened to be some blood up in the grooves, and wherever the carpeting had to go up, it just randomly wicked down.
So this would be in the negative areas?
In the negative areas of the shoe.
The areas in the grooves, so to speak.
I did notice that there was this area here, which could possibly have been a border of the shoe. And there also is some little, what I call squiggles or little S shapes, which might represent the curved areas between the design elements, but they weren't clear enough or reliable enough to make any kind of a positive determination.
Can you point out to the areas that you did just refer to and maybe draw in a little arrow, if you can do that without drawing over any significant portion of the photograph that would hide something that you needed to do in your analysis? Why don't you just draw a little red arrow and try to avoid any areas that were significant in terms of what you looked at.
Okay, this area here was the area I've referred to that might be the border of the shoe. And this area down here, where it changes direction, kind of like an S, is an example of that possible, the negative area of the shoe.
Stop for a second. Can you take the rubber shoe and describe for us how it is that is possibly consistent with the sole of the Silga?
Yes, well, I don't know how well this can be seen with the light, but if you follow the grooves between the design elements, they change direction. So there's gentle curves between those design elements. And that would be the area that would be, still might have some blood in it at that point back down the driveway, that far from the actual crime scene. And these little changes of directions that you can see down here, as well as this border, and you really can't see any of them clear enough to make an overlay, but you can see something that suggests that, but there's just not enough detail to absolutely say that that's representative of the Silga sole.
Okay, were you going to point out a couple other of these design elements that were consistent with the sole?
No, I think that these in here probably show it as well as any, and actually there isn't enough clarity throughout this whole thing to really point to it and say positively that's what it represents. But rather, you are seeing a change of direction, and that's what you would expect if there was some blood here and the carpet toughed up. But there's also the phenomena of when you get into a Bronco and that's up rather high and you step up into it with your shoe, there's going to be some movement in getting into a vehicle. And because of the thick nature of this carpeting, I wouldn't expect to see necessarily a clear rendition of, at that point, of the shoe.
Okay.
So I couldn't eliminate it, I couldn't positively associate it with the Silga sole.
And just generally speaking, when we're talking about impressions on carpeting, what kind of problems are there or issues are there concerning whether you're going to get an impression on a carpet?
Carpet in general,
Yeah.
if you have carpeting that's stepped on right after stepping in blood, you will get impressions, but not as crisp and clear as you would on a smooth surface or on the concrete walkway. And again, it's going to be a factor of how thick the carpeting is. If it's the indoor-outdoor carpeting that's very smooth and tightly woven, you will get a better representation of the shoe than if it's a very thick shag carpeting, which will give you all sorts of problems in reproducing the design from that shoe. So you have those variables as well.
Okay. Now, on the 1st of September, when you were at the Los Angeles Police Department and you saw this Bronco carpet, did you see some other items there that you later on analyzed?
Yes, I did.
And did you see specifically an item 86 in Nicole's dress?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Now, before getting into some of the other items that you looked at in this case, Mr. Bodziak, and you can resume the witness stand. I will take that. Did you make any effort to assist law enforcement in trying to locate someone that might have sold the shoe to the defendant, a Bruno Magli shoe?
Yes, I did.
What did you do in terms of that?
Initially, I obtained the distribution records from Mr. Peter Gruderich, who is the owner of the Bruno Magli store in New Jersey that distributed the shoes in this country. And that listed all of the shoes in size 12 and 13, which were sent out or distributed in 1991 and 1992. The reason I included size 13 because this request was made before I ever had any samples of the soles from Silga, and I was just, as I had mentioned earlier, making that general specific determination of shoe size just with the measurement, whereas later on I would have only needed to ask them about the size 12. But I went and requested those, and I also requested a list of 40 locations in the United States and Puerto Rico which sold these shoes. and I provided that information along with photographs of the Bruno Magli shoes which he had sent me, and provided them to the Los Angeles Police Department and to the FBI office in Los Angeles for the purposes of looking for sales records at those stores of those shoes.
To your knowledge, was a salesperson located who could recall having sold a Bruno Magli shoe of either the Lorenzo or Lion type to the defendant?
No, to the best of my knowledge, that was never done because every store had a problem searching their records back that far.
And to your knowledge, was any determination made whether or not these shoes were given to the defendant as a gift?
That's a possibility.
Now, in the cases that you've analyzed, you said that many of them, the shoes from a suspect are not recovered. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And specifically limiting yourself to the cases that you've analyzed where the shoe impressions are in blood, is it uncommon not to recover shoes?
But shoes are an article of clothing which are very personal to most people. And after we wear our shoes for a while, they become comfortable, and we don't like to give them up. And so in most of the cases I receive, which do not have a lot of blood in that case, either because it's a burglary or a shooting and the person wasn't near the victim, we find the shoes because the person sees no reason to get rid of them, and they're really not conscious of the shoes. In homicides where a lot of blood is shed and the subject steps in the blood and leaves bloody shoe prints, it's very common to not only not retrieve the shoes but the bloody clothing as well, because it's obvious to the person who committed the crime that the clothing and the shoes are well covered with blood and that could be incriminating, and they usually discard them. In some of those cases, we will recover that material from a dumpster or something if someone sees them, place it there, and then of course we would make comparisons to associate it with that any suspect. But in a lot of the cases, we never recover the clothing.
Okay. Now, sir, with respect to the other items that you looked at, I'd like to start with the eyeglass envelope, which has previously been marked as People's 32 for identification. If I might approach the witness. Sir, showing you People's 32 for identification. Can you unseal that, telling us what you're doing for the record?
Okay, do you want me to tear the seal, the yellow seal?
Yes.
Okay, I'm tearing the yellow seal. And I'm opening the envelope, and inside, encased in plastic, is a white envelope with a pair of glasses inside.
Sir, did you look at the envelope, the shoe pattern, if there is one on that envelope?
Yes, I did.
And can you hold up so the jurors can see what you looked at?
Yes, the shoe pattern is down at the bottom center of the envelope, on its edge.
And are there any difficulties that would be encountered in terms of depositing a shoe impression on this kind of item?
Are there difficulties in...
In terms, I mean, what kind of shoe impression are you going to get? A high-quality impression, a not so high?
Well, you could get a reasonably good quality impression depending on a lot of factors. In this particular case, there's just a small partial fragment that's maybe an inch and a quarter long, and representing just two of the design elements of the Silga sole, as well as the evidence of the double border.
Were there enough design elements there for you to make any kind of a positive determination?
Only to say that the design on this envelope is similar to components of the Silga shoe, but it's not large enough, it's too small, to associate with a specific portion of any of the soles, or to determine if it's a left or a right or a particular size.
Okay. Thank you. You may remove, you can replace that if you like. With respect to item number 86, which you first saw on September the 1st at the Los Angeles Police Department, did you have the opportunity to look at that in more detail at your laboratory?
I'm sorry, which item?
86, the dress.
Yes, I did.
And what, if any, analysis did you perform on the dress?
The dress was examined initially, just visually. Then it was examined with various light sources in the visible, ultraviolet, and infrared range. And based on that screening under the different wavelengths of light, the dress was photographed with infrared film. And the reason for that was that the black color of the dress became very light, and therefore the resultant blood impressions on the dress became relatively dark and were easier to see.
Your Honor, I'd like at this time to mark as people's next in order. That would be 398, a board entitled Nicole's Dress, or Dress Board, LAPD number 86.
All right, so mark 398.
and step down and illustrate for us what conclusions you drew regarding this and how you came to those conclusions.
Okay, on the left-hand side of the chart is just a regular copy shot of the front of the dress, just showing what the entire dress looked like. And you can see how small it is in contrast to its regular size because of this ruler. In the center is a natural size photograph, meaning it's the actual size of the dress, again of the front of the dress. And in this area you can see in the center front an impression. And to visualize that impression, to further enhance it,
Hold on for a second, Mr. Bozier. Now, in the middle photograph, are we looking at the front of the dress or the back, or what portion?
we're looking at the front of the dress.
Okay. And,
There's a seam here, but it's the front of the dress. You can see the zipper going down the back.
and you said that to enhance it, you had to do something to it. What was that?
To enhance it, I photographed it with infrared photography, and the result of that is the picture, which is also natural size, which is on the right side of the chart. It has now turned or rendered the black color of the dress a very light color, but it has not had any effect on the blood on the dress, and so the blood now appears dark.
So basically, this infrared has simply changed the contrast, so to speak, in order to be able to visualize this better.
Yes, under the infrared wavelength, the dress is recording on the film as light, and the blood is recording as dark.
And what conclusion did you come to? Yeah, tell us how you came to that conclusion.
Okay, I found 3 areas of a heel print on the front of the dress, and those areas were the top left corner of a heel, the curved border, and the flat edge on the right of the heel. And I prepared an overlay over this to show those 3 features, because those features are also found on the left silga sole that I've previously been describing this morning. Namely, because of the cut-off nature of the medial side of the heel, the pointed nature of the left side, and the curve in between. Those same features appear on the dress. The impression was too limited to make any further comparison, so I cannot say that it was made by a silga sole, but I can say that there was an impression which did share those 3 features. Even though that's limited, they are there.
And is this a shoe impression?
Yes, that's a heel impression.
Okay. And in terms of a dress that's being worn by a person at the time that the shoe is impressed onto the dress, what kind of an impression are you going to get, given that a person is somewhat rounded?
Well, this particular dress is a stretch type dress. So when it's worn, it's a different size and shape than when it's just laying out like it is here. So even though these are natural size photographs of the dress, there is no way to reconstruct the exact shape and size of this particular area. Nevertheless, the overlay of in this particular case, the size 46 heel, left heel, fits into as far as the point of the heel on the left and the cutoff area on the right fits that very well. But the curved area in between is a little distorted, which is very likely because of the stretching effect of the dress. So there's nothing here to suggest that this absolutely was the silga sole of this size. There are other shoes that have curved heels and cutoffs and points, but based on the limited things we can see, it could have been made by this sole, as were the other impressions.
Thank you. And you can remain there because we're going to switch to another chart shortly. Mr. Bodziak, did you also have occasion to look at some autopsy photographs of Nicole Brown in this case?
Yes, I did.
And was there one photograph in particular which you looked at in order to determine whether there was a shoe impression on that photograph?
Yes, there was.
And I'd like to mark as people's next in order, that would be 399 for identification, a board that says autopsy photograph of Nicole Brown. It's one that's already been introduced into evidence. One of them has. I don't know whether this is something the court blocked out. I think
Yes,
the
it
court's
is.
familiar
Mr.
with it.
Bancroft, let's avoid this one, please. Proceed.
Okay. Mr. Fairclough. Mr. Bodziak, direct your attention to 399 for identification. Are these 2 autopsy photographs that you saw?
The one on the left is one that I saw. The one on the right is a improved visualization of that same photograph.
Okay, and is this another situation in which something was done to change the contrast, essentially, in order to bring out certain features so that they could be seen more readily?
Yes.
And With respect to these photographs, can you tell us what you did to determine whether there were any shoe impressions on those depicted on the photographs?
Well, the one on the left, which is the natural light photograph of the back of Nicole Brown, there is a contusion area, an area which is reddened and which I recognize as a contusion. This is something that I normally examine. And one particular part of that impression has a very, very straight line. And perhaps if I drew several little arrows so it could be easy to follow that line or somehow, but I don't know how well it can be seen, but it's a very, very smooth line which would represent about the middle of the back of the heel or toe around about 90 degrees. And because of the straightness of that line, I would interpret that as being either a toe or a heel impression, the beginning of a contusion as a result of contact with the shoe and the skin.
And you've been referring to the photograph on the left of this board, which appears to be the unenhanced photograph.
Yes.
Is that correct? Would you like to use a pen, or can we use an overlay for the purposes of illustrating what you just testified to?
Either one.
All right. Your Honor, do you want these separately marked, or?
I think the overlay should be included as a sub-item of 399, so we'll make that 390, the overlay 399A.
Make it what?
399A.
Okay. This is going to be hard to write on, Your Honor. Actually, I have two overlays. Can we make the larger one 399A and the smaller one 399B? Mr. Fairtlow just gave me a pen that he says will write on this, so I'm going to place that on with the court's permission just to make it easier. Sir, I'm going to hand you what we've marked as 399A for identification, and perhaps using the unenhanced photograph, you can indicate for us by placing that on.
Okay. Is there some tape or something I can permanently?
Tape. Got it. Got it.
Okay, with regard to 399A, I will place the curvature of the raised area, which is the inner border, the area which would apply most pressure to the skin, and I will place that over the curvature. Okay, and that would be one, if it was the toe of the shoe, of the left shoe, this would be one way in which this curvature would correspond with the curved area in the toe of the shoe.
And now if you could take the smaller one, perhaps you could place this on in the position where the curvature would be represented on the enhanced version, but going the other way, since you're indicating it could be a toe or a heel.
Yes, well, because the curve is if it was the heel, it would have to be in the other direction. And so, again, thank you. We'll place the raised inner border of the heel over this. And we'll tape that to the photograph. And now, by moving this up and down, you can see how this curved area, this very, very straight edge, coincides with the same contour and general size and shape features of the curvature of the heel as well. So it's a very limited mark, but it does have two features that are important. One is that it's a very, very straight line. It's not like a rock or a stick or something that would be fallen on or would be an unnatural type of event, but rather something that's more likely to be a man-made object such as a shoe. And the curvature of that does coincide with the curvature in the heel and toe. Even though that's limited, there's not enough other features to make any further comparison.
So you can't say that that is from the Silga sole?
No, I cannot.
Is there anything inconsistent, though, with the Silga sole?
Well, the only area that can really be relied upon is that curve, and there's nothing inconsistent about that curve, but there are no other features which are reliable enough to include in this.
Now, Mr. Bodziak, do you have some training and experience over and above what you've already talked to us about in the area of patterned injuries that you could just briefly relate that is different from what you've already said in respect to shoe prints in general?
I have a lot of experience because this is the photographs of contusions from autopsies of victims is one of the regular types of footwear impressions which I have been trained to examine and have been examining for 20 years. In addition, I have listened to presentations of forensic pathologists. I've taken courses by forensic pathologists in blunt force injury and pattern injury, and have conferred with them on several occasions with regard to my observations, and have found that mine and theirs agree as far as interpretation.
Was one of the portions of your book dealing with patterned injuries in the case of shoe prints?
Yes, it was.
And Mr. Bodziak, perhaps if you could you show this board?
Okay. Do you want me to flip it up and down, or?
Yeah, if you could.
Okay, I actually need an extra hand, but I'll try to do this. The straight curved edge is this edge right here, and it coincides with the curvature of the heel. And the curved straight edge, or I say straight edge, it's a curved edge, but it's very man-made like, not rough, but very consistent, corresponds with that respective portion of the heel, or in case of the toe as well. This particular edge here may be a curved contusion from the heel. It corresponds with this respective area of the heel of the shoe.
Madam Court Reporter, Quarter Till. All right.
I'm almost finished, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Bodziak, based upon your analysis of all of the items that we've discussed today, was there any indication that more than one pair of shoes was involved in this crime?
No, there was not.
And based upon your comparison of the Bruno Magli shoe with the defendant's Reeboks, can you include him as a candidate who could have worn the shoes that created the impressions in this case?
Yes, I could include him as a candidate for possibly having worn those shoes.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right. Counsel, I thought we agreed to take a brief recess at this point. All right. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a recess to reset up some of the exhibits and a few matters, so we'll be in recess probably about 15 or 20 minutes. All right, please remember all my admonitions to you, and Mr. Bodziak, you can step down. Matter. Mr. Bailey, your client has had the opportunity to review those items. All right, we're ready to proceed. All right, Deputy McNair, let's have the jurors, please. The record reflect we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Mr. Bodziak, would you resume the witness stand, please? All right, good afternoon, Mr. Bodziak. You're reminded, sir, you are still under oath. Mr. Bailey, you may cross-examine.
Mr. Bodziak, in your book, you indicate that in many law enforcement departments, footprint impression identification is often a poor orphan, either in the document examiner's corner or fingerprint guy's corner and so forth.
I don't think I used the term poor orphan, but I think I understand what you mean. It takes second or third place to another discipline, yes.
All right. Have you worked directly with your counterpart at the LAPD in cases including this one?
Yes, I have in the past.
Okay. And what about in this case?
Worked in what capacity?
Well, in an advisory capacity, how early in the game were you consulted in this matter? Can you tell me?
I first received the evidence, I believe, August 8th of 1994. I was advised that I would be receiving it a few days prior to that.
So you had no input at all in the handling of the crime scene, et cetera.
That's correct.
Now, would you tell the jury the difference between a patent and a latent foot impression?
Yes, a patent, P-A-T-E-N-T, foot impression is one which is visible to the naked eye, and a latent, L-A-T-E-N-T, foot impression is one which is invisible, cannot be seen by the naked eye.
Is it possible for an expert to expose, as you showed us with the infrared on the dress, a latent footprint so that it becomes visible and photographable?
That's often possible, yes.
And what about footprints that are made with the substance leaving the impression on concrete, as in this case being blood? Are there ways to enhance the blood chemically with lighting, special photography, in order to lift those prints as you might lift a latent fingerprint?
Primarily in this case, either through specialized photography or through chemical enhancement.
All right. Had you been called to the scene of the crime and seen what you have before you now?
Yes.
And this, by the way, is a reconstruction done last February, correct?
When I visited the scene,
That
yes.
exhibit that's standing
Yes,
vertically.
yes.
Might you not have been able to enhance some of the footprints which you could not identify through the use of special techniques?
That would be possible.
Okay. Had you been called upon to do so, do you have the equipment and experience to have looked in the home of the victim, Nicole Brown Simpson, for any evidence of footprints going in and out or on the carpet and other places?
Bloody footprints or any footprints?
Any footprints?
Would I have the ability to look in the home? Of course.
All right. And tell the jury, if you would, how these can be seen, even though they may not be apparent to the naked eye.
You're referring only to the latent footprints then?
Latent footprints.
Okay. Latent footprints, we're covering a large number of possibilities here, so let me list a few, and if you want.
Right.
If you have a latent footprint, it denotes one that's not visible, and very often it's not visible because the contrast of the material that's deposited by the shoe is it's essentially the same color as the background it's on. For example, if a person has some residue or dust on their shoe and steps onto a light-colored tile floor, both the impression and the floor being so close in color and the impression being so thin, it simply wouldn't be able to be seen. But with either specialized lighting or with special lifting techniques, that impression could be further visualized. It could be either discovered or transferred to a black surface, which would then give better contrast. So with regard to possible impressions, you could go through an interior scene and using techniques such as that, look in areas for footwear impressions.
Were you at any time furnished any footwear impressions of the interior of the Nicole Brown Simpson home to examine or compare?
No.
Now, in the sketch, we have pointed out, let me put this up if I may. With permission, I'm going to leave it here because the jury's already seen it. It doesn't block us off. Place it there.
Certainly.
The question refers to this area here. You told us this morning that soil varied from place to place in its ability to capture and hold footwear impression.
That's correct.
Did you make any examination of that soil on February 16th when you made your trip to 875 South Bundy?
I was aware of it. I purposely didn't look at it because it was several months afterwards, and there could have potentially been tremendous differences in the characteristics of that soil at the time.
And you say you purposely did not even view it?
Not specifically for thoroughness in terms of looking at every aspect of it. It was an area where there were a lot of plants and vegetation and leaves and mulch and all, but I didn't actually look at every little area. I just generally glanced at it as I was doing my other business there.
Did it generally appear to be soft soil?
I didn't walk on it.
Didn't step on it, poke in it?
No.
Well, did it appear to be cracked and dried?
I really didn't examine it any further than what I've described.
Were you anxious not to see it for some reason?
Well, I didn't have any impressions or any reason to see it, and the only way in which I recall it is because it was right next to where I was working.
To your knowledge, were impressions or photographs ever attempted in the area of the soil where Mr. Goldman's body was found?
I asked if there were any other impressions in this case than what I had examined, including casts or impressions photographed in soil. That's a routine question which I ask in any case because for some reason we very often don't get all of the photographs, or a person may make a cast and not think it turned out well and not send it in when in fact it may be of some value. So as a matter of routine, I asked if there were any others, and I was told there was not.
All right, so far as you know, you have everything.
That's correct.
All right. Now, you said at the close of your testimony that Mr. Simpson was a candidate for having worn the shoes whose impressions you found in the photographs.
That's correct.
Now, what do you know besides the fact that you have some size 12 Reeboks that are apparently his that would make him a candidate?
That would be what I was basing my statement on. I couldn't eliminate him. He certainly, with the size foot that would wear these shoes, could wear the Bruno Magli size 12 European size 46 shoes.
That size foot or any smaller foot within limits, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you're assuming that the perpetrator, whoever that may have been, wearing Bruno Magli shoes, size 46, was wearing his own shoes, aren't you?
Well, you can always get into the hypotheticals of could you have borrowed someone's shoes to commit a crime and
Or steal.
or steal them or whatever. Sure, there's always those possibilities.
What are most bank robberies committed with by way of vehicles?
By way of vehicle,
The perpetrator's vehicle.
they
what is it?
usually steal a car and then they have a switch point at which they get out of the stolen car a few blocks or a few miles from the scene and they get into their own car and
Hopefully
very
that
often,
car can't be
very
close
often
to
they're
the-
seen.
Wait.
Excuse me.
You need to allow him to finish
I
his
thought you were
answer.
through. Their hope is that they can't be tied to the vehicle identified by one or more witnesses, perhaps as being at the scene, right?
And sometimes they can't.
Can we eliminate the Reeboks as having made any of the impressions you've testified to today?
I saw nothing to indicate these Reeboks left any impression that I was shown at this scene.
From the pictures that you have exhibited and explained to the jury in the court,
Right.
is it not possible to say those Reeboks did not make those prints?
Is it not possible to say they did not make it? I'm sorry, there's a double negative. I'm not sure how could you rephrase that?
Can you not say, as you examine the Reeboks, these shoes didn't make any of those prints?
I don't feel they did because there would have had to been darker impressions. If you were being totally hypothetical about it and said, could one of those impressions that were very, very faint somewhere further down the walkway in blood have left the impression? In theory, including unrealistic things like could somebody have carried that person wearing these shoes and then put them down, or could they have walked along the soil and behind it and jumped over the wall and then stepped on the sidewalk? If you include those kind of things, then I couldn't eliminate them. But if that person were to walk through the blood down the Bundy walkway, there would be darker impressions before those light impressions.
You know these came from, Mr. Boziak?
Do I know where they came from? They were represented to me as shoes that Mr. Simpson said that he wore either the day before the crime or the day of the crime.
And he gave them voluntarily to Detective Lang, did he not?
Sustained.
But in any event, it was represented to you that those were positively identified by Mr. Simpson as his shoes.
That's correct.
Now, on September 21, 1994, after you had gotten into this case, apparently, and before you had made a positive identification by going to the factory, did you write a letter to Detectives Lang and Van Atter requesting something?
Yes, I did.
What did you ask for?
I asked if it were possible to obtain any additional shoes of Mr. Simpson for comparison purposes, for different reasons.
And what was the response that you got?
The response I didn't get from them, but the response I got was that no further search warrants were possible when it was I think it was just too late. Or I don't know. You'd have to ask them.
A search warrant is an order from a court allowing law enforcement to go into a private residence whether the owner likes it or not, right?
Well, I'm telling you that I don't have firsthand knowledge of the reason. I'm just speculating, which I shouldn't have done.
Okay. But you were told that warrants were unavailable?
Sustained.
Okay. Did you ever make any request of the defense that you be permitted to examine all of the shoes in the house?
I've never known of a case where that was done.
Is it logical?
No,
No.
no.
Well, if the defendant has been voluntarily assisting in giving his blood and giving his hair and other things to the police, do you have any reason to think that he would be otherwise?
Well, cause effectively sustained.
Okay. What happens when officers, who perhaps may be unaware of the phenomenon of latent prints, trample up the scene before the technicians get there?
Latent prints of one type, sir.
Footprints.
I know, but in dust, in blood,
In the general circumstances in this case.
in this case, the only ones I'm familiar with are blood. With regard to blood, at the time they arrived, they could have marched 100 people over them. It wouldn't make any difference.
Okay. Would not have disturbed it or otherwise changed the pattern because it had dried, right?
That's correct.
Blood dries rather rapidly, does it not?
Very rapidly.
If, assume for a minute, someone were to walk down a narrow path partially covered with leaves and partially concrete, might it be that whoever was doing the walking would leave footwear impressions of some kind?
On the leaves or the concrete?
I'm not talking about bloody feet now. I'm just
Okay.
talking about street shoes.
Okay, well, I don't know how many leaves and how much concrete you're talking about, but with regard to leaves, I've never had a case where I had a footwear impression on leaves. I've never, in walking around, and believe, I've created a lot of cases for training, in walking around trying to make impressions. I've never had a case where I could make an impression on a leaf. As I explained earlier today, in theory, if you had a bloody shoe and you stepped on a leaf, aside from the fact that it would have probably stuck to the shoe and eventually just got scraped off, it's conceivable you could have found a leaf or two with some partial impressions on it. It's conceivable, but I've never seen one in over 20 years.
But my question specifies a lack of blood on the suspect's shoe.
Oh, I'm sorry, a lack of
Simply
blood.
a dry leather
Yeah.
sole.
I wouldn't think that you would get any reproduction on the leaf whatsoever. On the concrete, concrete's generally rough and porous, and you wouldn't get a residue impression on concrete because whether it's concrete or the carpeting in this courtroom, as you're walking, you're picking up residue, but you're depositing the same residue onto a surface that has the equivalent. So you wouldn't be able to see a differentiation between what you deposited and what you picked up, and you would not be able to visualize any footwear impressions, whether it's carpet or concrete. So you wouldn't, in those cases, be able to, unless the person was picking up some type of residue and then stepped on an object like perhaps a piece of paper or a folder maybe the victim was holding or something that was around the scene. It was relatively clean. If they then stepped on that relatively clean object, then they could leave a coating of that residue either in a patent or latent impression, and then that could be retrieved.
All right, Mr. Boziak, would you allow the attorneys to complete asking the question before you start to answer?
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
As the court reporter has difficulty writing. Mr. Bailey.
When you walk on the surface, you never really know what evidence you may have left of your footwear until it is checked. True?
Yes, sir.
And certainly that would be true of a layman who does not have your expertise in this area. Right?
Yes.
If difficult or faint, non-bloody, non-greasy, footwear impressions are left, and then the area is trampled, what is the likelihood that any will remain that are distinguishable?
Overall, I assume it's a hypothetical question.
It is.
Presuming that the situation was different than the one I just described, and there could be latent footwear impressions at a scene, it's possible that an unknowing person could walk over those and coincidentally happen to step on the same areas, and they probably wouldn't totally eradicate or eliminate them, but they might cause some damage to them.
All right, I wasn't meaning to ask you to assume a single person, but quite a number of people and quite
Yes.
a number of feet walking back and forth over the exact same area. Doesn't that tend to obliterate whatever might have been there?
It doesn't help it, and it may obliterate it, but each case is different.
Okay, fine. When you began to lay out all of the positive footprints that you testified here today as to left and right,
Yes.
and see what appears to be movement of someone, both down at the gate, on the steps, and then in a fairly straight line out to the west, as if making good one's escape, did you notice something very odd about the pattern?
About the ones that I have labeled left or right.
Yeah.
There's too many of them.
What do you mean by too many?
Well, the person in those Bruno Mali shoes didn't just walk down the walkway once. They went back somehow and walked down again,
All right. Now, why are your impressions generally going to the west?
because that's where the blood is, and they're tracking the blood from east to west.
And what about the stop and turn? I want to point specifically to these down there.
Yes.
These two here, both facing directly into the house.
Yes.
You notice, by the way, that the left and right are on the wrong side?
Yes.
And do you have any explanation as to how those were made?
I wouldn't purport to be able to reconstruct exactly what happened, but it appears likely that the person may have been standing over in that bush area where the tree was to get out of the line of sight, perhaps, and then came out of that area initially in the direction of the doorway and then proceeded back west again.
If the set of prints that leads up to L&N were made by the same shoes, here's L&N. We have a person who's turned 90 degrees and standing like this, do we not?
Not if they're two different sets of tracks.
Okay, so are you assuming that we have a right but no left and a left but no right standing next to each other and both facing south?
Well, I'm not assuming it. That's what's there, and I can't explain why that is happening.
All right. If a person were exiting the scene with some alacrity, and by the way, you talked about gait and stride, there's nothing that gives us much help on the speed in these prints, is there?
No, sir.
Except that they seem close enough together as to suggest if it's one set, no running, no leaping.
I think even if it's one or two sets, they're relatively close together for a person that's big enough to wear a size 12.
You have identified the Bruno Mali 46/size 12 shoe as the only prints left and right that you are able to single out, correct?
That's correct.
And no other shoe of any manufacturer have you been able to pin to any of these impressions, true?
That's correct.
So if there was more than one person running, it would appear that they were both wearing Bruno Mali 46s. Is that right?
Or one person went back after they have worn the blood off their shoe. They went back to the front gate area, reobtained blood on their shoe through whatever activity or walking through the blood they were doing, and then exited that area again. So it could be the same person. In fact, it's very likely that it's the same person.
In other words, having made good ones escape to the alley, you're assuming that somebody, a perpetrator, then returned, stepped in more blood, and made more prints.
If they encountered the second victim in this case, or they forgot something or had some other reason to go back, yes. Yes.
Okay. Can you show me any two prints that overlap?
No.
In the event that someone had done as you suggest, and left the alley, and then come back for some reason, and stepped in blood, would you not be likely to find at least two prints that overlap one another?
Not in an area that big, not necessarily.
Well, it looks like a walking pattern on that diagram, does it not?
No, it looks like two persons, two separate walkings of one person.
Is the southward-facing set of prints, even though they appear to be reversed, that is to say L and M, and L is the right foot and M is the left foot, right?
Yes.
Is that consistent with someone who is leaving and turns to look back for some reason?
No. I mean, it could be, but I would think,
Could you step up to the board and
Sure.
tell me why that is not consistent with the prints we see? What mitigates against it?
yeah, you're referring to L and M,
Yeah.
and you're saying, could that person, I'm not sure your enactment of that.
Assume that I'm running or walking west out of the alley,
Okay, this
Okay.
direction.
and then turn in some fashion,
Yes.
90 degrees in order to look back 180 degrees.
Right.
Might that have caused those impressions?
Well, it would be on the opposite side.
Puzzling.
Pardon?
That's puzzling, isn't it?
Argumentative.
Sustained.
Well, if he has an explanation, I'd like to hear it. It would appear from those prints that L and M is like this.
It's argumentative that I make most destroy Mr. Bailey's.
Oh. And you want to describe, Mr. Bailey, your stance at this point?
Yes, for the record, Your Honor, I'm standing with my legs crossed, my right foot on the left side and vice versa, which is consistent with what we're looking at there, is it not?
Well, yes, with regard to L and M.
If those two were made by the same person at the same time, his legs are crossed, right?
Describe the same time.
2 feet.
2 feet on the
attached
ground.
to the same body.
If they were, yes, you'd have to be standing like you are.
All right. Now, if they weren't, then you're assuming somebody with the same shoes walking twice, having gotten a fresh supply of blood to lay on the...
Not necessarily.
No, I'm sorry.
Would you like me to explain?
Yes, please.
Okay. In this particular area, very possibly because it's out of the line of sight of the front gate area, the person could have stepped back into the soil area to get out of the line of sight. They could have stepped forward and looked. They could have stepped back. They could have stepped forward with the left foot on the opposite side and gone down the sidewalk. So there's a very logical explanation for that. There's no way to absolutely reconstruct it.
Was there soft soil at the time of the crime in that area?
Was there soft soil? When
Right.
I was there...
Just north of the...
Yeah. I don't have photographs of the soil at that time, nor would I be able to tell the hardness or softness of the soil from photographs. When I was there in February, it was full of vegetation.
Did you see in L&M?
I don't think he finished his answer.
Have you finished your answer?
Well, I was just going to say that very low vegetation, you would have no problem standing in it or walking back in it.
When you photographed or looked at the photographs of L&M, you didn't take any of these, did you?
No.
When you examined those photographs, did you see any evidence of any soil in them?
In the photograph of the impressions, no.
All right. So when you speculate that the author of L&M may have stepped backward into the soil, that is just that, isn't it? Speculation.
Well, it's speculation as much as I can't say that's absolutely what happened, but I would not necessarily expect there to be soil from stepping back in that area. If the soil was very hard or if it was covered with low-growing vegetation, there may be nothing on the shoe and they would still be depositing blood impressions.
Right. And you have said, and again, you're assuming that someone wants to get out of the line of sight. Line of sight of what?
Of whatever they're trying to avoid, a person coming to the gate, a noise out on the front, a noise in the back, anything.
Did you attempt to do that yourself and see if you removed yourself at all from the line of sight at either end?
Just by standing on the edge of the sidewalk, you're out of the line of the sight of the front. Yes, I did observe that because when I was reconstructing the position of these, I was surprised to see them in this configuration, and I was looking for an explanation of why these would be in this direction, and the one that I have given you is one of the better ones that I've thought of.
Okay. Well, where does it lead us?
We have this argument.
Sustain. Rephrase the question.
Generally speaking, light travels in straight lines, does it not?
Yes, sir.
All right. Assuming that a person is standing on those footprints, can you see in a straight line to the front gate?
You can with L, but as I had explained to you, this could be simply a stepping out and looking and coming back real quick. So in that case, under that hypothetical, which I hate to get into because they're not factual, the person would want to extend out far enough just to get into the line of sight. So again, we can't say if that's what happened or did happen, but it's certainly logical in my opinion.
Did any,
For the record, Your Honor, when Mr. Wozniak was answering that, he stepped forward with his right foot and turned to his left as if he were looking in the direction of a line parallel with his shoulders.
Yes. Thank you.
do you see any obstruction between the gate and those footprints?
Which gate, sir?
Front gate first.
Front gate? With L,
Yeah,
you can see the front gate if your head is centered over L, presuming your head is over L.
right.
With M, you're starting to interfere with the corner there, but I believe you can see over that, at least part of it.
Have you got a straight edge up there like a pointer?
Yes.
Would you connect L and the front gate, please?
Parallel to the, okay.
No, I don't mean just that edge. Go right for the middle of the front gate and see if you can draw a straight line from both L and M to it.
I'm not sure what you're asking. Like this?
Can you see a straight line from M to that point without obstruction?
yes.
And L.
Yes.
The same is true for the rear gate?
Yes, it appears to be.
But your theory is that somebody was trying to hide from someone. Is that right?
That's, as I represented that as a hypothetical, that might be one plausible explanation of why L and M were heading out of that soiled area.
Okay, now, there are two at a 45-degree angle, a left and a right.
Yes.
Not very close to one another. However, O is fairly close to M. Could that impression have been made by the right foot while M was being made with the left by a person standing like this, one foot cocked at a 45, the other pointing south?
It could be, or the person could have stepped out on M and then headed westward with O being the first step with the right foot. In other words, they could have stepped out of the soil with M and then at an angle stepped off toward the back gate.
Okay. And what about the next one? S, I believe it is.
Well, there's no way of knowing if S was the next one because you have some indistinct ones in here that may be intermediate steps.
I'm sorry, when I said next one, I meant the next one at a 45-degree angle to the track
Okay?
of the person. That is S, is it not?
Yes.
There is no footprint pointing in a similar direction close enough to it to have been made at the same time. Is that true?
None that I can see.
Okay. Now, what is the approximate scale on that chart, do you know?
It's on the
I
other-
believe
the
it's
other
on the
chart.
second board, just wherever that is. I don't know how to represent
Oh,
that.
here it is.
Yes.
Just eyeballing that, Mr. Wozniak. By the way, do you prefer being called Mr. or Agent?
Either.
Okay. Just eyeballing that, does it look like a foot is a little less than an inch?
Yes, sir.
All right. So having that in mind, would you say that O and M could have been made by the same person,
Yes, they could.
standing with 1 foot askew?
Yes.
Go ahead and resume the stand, if you will. If your theory is correct, and somebody, having committed one murder and created a lot of blood, got partway up the walkway and decided to turn around and head back, do you see the turning point anywhere in your reconstruction?
No, I do not see a point where footprints turn around, but I would not expect that that would eliminate the possibility that they did turn around.
Okay. Well, without any evidence of turnaround, supposing you had two people with the same brand and size of shoe,
In my opinion, that would not occur in this case.
why not?
Because in all of the cases I've worked, I can count on one hand the number of cases where a common shoe like this Reebok that's sold in many, many stores, both in size and design, was shared by two persons simultaneously at the crime scene. It has occurred, but only on a couple of occasions, and only with common shoes. You might, for instance, with regard to certain gangs that wear the same pattern of shoes, find that type of a scenario. With regard to different suspects wearing different size shoes of the same brand, I've only had a couple cases like that. So in most instances, if they did have the same brand shoes, they would be different sizes, and only that has occurred, to my knowledge, a couple times over 20 years. Those were with common shoes. These shoes were very uncommon, and most of the shoe stores around the country only carried at one time one size 12. To conjecture, with what I know about this, that two people independently bought size 12 Bruno Magli shoes at different points or over different months apart from the same store or at different stores, and they were only sold by 40 stores, and just happened to commit this crime together is impossible for me to believe.
You're making an assumption I didn't ask you to make, and that is that the pairs were coincidentally similar.
What pairs?
If there were two pair of shoes, that they were there by coincidence.
Overruled.
It's a coincidence that I don't believe would occur.
Of course not. But it could have been deliberate, couldn't it?
Calls for speculation.
No, I don't believe that
Wait,
either.
wait.
I'm sorry.
Sustain. Rephrase the question.
Rephrase it.
Yes.
Would it be possible for two people to arrange, knowing that footwear, particularly if you're in the business of crime, can be almost as dangerous as a fingerprint? Would it be possible for two people to arrange to arrive at a crime scene in the same footwear, make and model?
Of this type, Bruno Magli, size 12,
Yeah.
Solga soles,
Yeah.
as I've stated, in my opinion, no.
Do you mean to say that it'd be impossible to buy two pair of those shoes in the United States?
You're suggesting that they intentionally did it, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and the reason I'm saying no is because most people, even fairly knowledgeable people about evidence, would not have the degree of knowledge necessary to know where to find some kind of a rare shoe. I mean, they would go for a common shoe, like, presuming that that could be done with a common shoe. They would do that with a common shoe. They would not be searching for $160 to $180 Bruno Magli shoes where they had to go halfway, to different states at the same time to buy them in the same size. Just, in my opinion, it wouldn't happen. It's uncanny. I don't believe it happened, and I don't believe it happened intentionally or otherwise.
But it's possible.
In my opinion, it's not even possible because it's so ridiculous.
What you're saying is that two perpetrators who decided on this plan are totally incapable in the United States of America of finding two pair of Bruno Magli 12s. Is that right?
Ask and answer argument.
Overruled.
What I'm saying is they wouldn't have the knowledge to look for Bruno Magli shoes of this rare design. If they were going to commit a crime, why not just go out and buy shoes down at the store where you could walk in and find two of the same size and design? Why go to a situation where you would have to find rare shoes and probably have to make phone calls at one store to find out where you could buy the next pair at another store and spend that kind of money just to do that? People are not aware of footprint evidence to that degree. That would be more sophisticated than I could even envision if you asked me how would I construct something like this. It's just uncanny.
Do you ever work on bank robbery cases?
Yes?
Have not quite a number of those been solved by discrete footprints for impressions?
By footprints on the counters or in the lobby or on the exit of the bank, yes.
If I were to hop the bank's counter to get the money
Right.
with this shoe, and you recovered me with this shoe nearby, might you be able to match exactly my shoe print to the impression on the counter?
Yes, I do, and I do that regularly.
Okay. So why is it that you feel that criminals are unaware of the fact that footwear can be a liability in detection?
Misstates the testimony.
Overruled.
They simply are. I mean, we're having a hard time.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Dietrich?
Wait, you need to
Go
finish the
ahead.
answer.
We're having a hard time educating the police forces of all of the possibilities with shoes. Most people are totally unaware of the footprints they leave, and perhaps the best example I could give of this is maybe 15 years ago there was a fad called streaking, and I had a case involving some streaking in a hotel up in the northeast part of the country. And ironically, the only part of clothing that the person ever wore and what convicted the person was the shoes. So I use that as a good example of how persons are just unaware of the prints they leave, which we discussed earlier, and they are even more unaware of the kind of hypothetical that you're suggesting. And not only are they unaware of that evidence and how to use the evidence in the manner you suggested, but the possibility or the likelihood of them going to the extreme that they would have to find this shoe, I don't believe, in my opinion, that could possibly happen.
So the FBI investigates streaking.
We conduct comparisons of evidence that are submitted to us by any law enforcement agency. We don't decide what's important or not.
Any idea of how many people, since you have been involved, have gone to jail because of their footprint impressions?
Irrelevant.
Overruled.
I'm sorry, could you?
How many cases can you think of, just since you have been on the scene, where footprint evidence has helped to put people in jail for various crimes?
Oh, I've made thousands of comparisons since 1973, and I've testified many, many times, but many, many more of those cases were adjudicated in other ways, and I didn't have to offer testimony, so I can't count the number of cases I've influenced, if that's what you're asking.
It is. Now, in most of the cases where you testified, or where there's an adjudication that didn't need your testimony, namely a plea of guilty,
Or stipulation.
or a stipulation that this shoe made that print, and we don't need Mr. Dietrich to tell us that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Wozniak, I'm sorry. I believe your colleague is in a different specialty. You would assume that somewhere along the line, the defendant who got caught because of his own shoe prints was made aware of that fact.
They are, yeah. I mean, they'll sit and watch my testimony, and I've even had one case where they came in the next day without their shoes on. So they certainly are aware of that, yes.
Do you think these fellows chat together at all once they get in the who's gal?
Calls for speculation.
Oh.
I'm sure they do.
And most of them are acutely aware of what mistakes they made that caused them to get convicted. Wouldn't you say that's a fair statement?
Yes.
Now, when you say criminals don't know or talk about certain aspects of their business, that's not based on any association you have with criminals, is it?
To the degree of elaboration that you were speculating on with regard to this case, it is far more sophisticated than I would ever envision any criminal, no matter how long they've been in jail or how much they've talked, of being able to pull off.
Well, of course, the criminals that you know about who left footwear impressions weren't so smart because they get caught, right?
And often they get caught a second time
Sure.
with foot impressions.
Sure. Professional assassins frequently do not get caught. True?
Calls for speculation.
Sustained. Sustained.
In any event, have you ever heard of bank robbers that wear covers, a mask, funny mask or something?
All the time, yes.
And that's so that no one can testify I saw that face, right?
Or that the bank camera will not pick up their face.
Have you heard of others who deliberately make themselves up with some degree of expertise to look like someone they are not?
Less rare, but I've heard of it,
A
yes.
higher level of profession, would you say?
Or a different approach, yes.
Well, that would cause a victim witness to look right at the perpetrator and say that's not the man. Right? Oh,
I guess you could make that argument, yes.
that would be the purpose of it, wouldn't you think?
It certainly would be.
Now, haven't you investigated crimes, Mr. Bojack, where it was apparent that the perpetrators were trying to mislead detectives?
I've had a couple cases where they have tried to plant evidence or create evidence to divert the attention from themselves, but that became known in the normal processing of the crime scene. There were things that didn't make sense, and it was ultimately other evidence caused them to admit that they did these things, and they confessed, but they weren't very sophisticated.
Okay. And then there are any number of unsolved crimes where we don't know whether that happened or not. Right?
That's possible,
Without
yes.
a solution, you don't know whether the planted evidence has misled the officer.
That's right, sure.
Well, to bring to a conclusion our investigation of the possibilities that could have led to this evidence that you have compiled for us, my understanding is your best explanation of the excess number of footprints that appears to be there is that one perpetrator wearing one pair of Bruno Magli shoes left the scene, went back, got some more blood, and left the scene a second time.
Well, it's vague as to leaving the scene of the state.
Well, when I say the scene, Mr. Boziak, I mean the immediate vicinity of the killing where the bodies were found. I do not mean the general surround.
Yes, there would have to be one person with the Bruno Magli size shoes that did exactly what you described, left a set of impressions. The blood would have been worn off their shoes, so you wouldn't see a turnaround or a footprints coming back, and then they would have new blood on the shoes for possible reasons, either a second victim or just walking back through the blood of the two victims, and then leaving the scene again.
You are making the assumption in that scenario that before the perpetrator turns and goes back to where the bodies are found, that all the blood is gone from the soles, at least so much as is capable of leaving an impression.
The physical evidence at the scene, which doesn't lie, is making that assumption, sir.
Show me a single print going the other way.
That's my point. There is none, and yet there are two sets of tracks of the same size and design shoe. And in my opinion, because of the scarcity and in some cases, stores carried one pair of size 12s and didn't get another till a year later. The scarcity of that design rules out any possibility that there were two people simultaneously with the same pairs of shoes on, Bruno Magli size 12. So that person would have had to have turned around, and obviously the blood was no longer on their feet. They didn't track backwards, and they re-bloodied the shoes and left again.
Okay? And is that the best you're able to make out of the evidence that's before us, despite the fact that there is not one single overlapping step?
I wouldn't, that's a big area. I wouldn't expect an when you say overlapping, you're talking about one step touching another.
One part of an impression overlapping a
Overlapping
pre-existing
another.
impression from trip number one in your scenario.
Yeah, that is a large area. That wouldn't be unusual at all for those two sets of tracks of one person not overlapping.
All right. What is inconsistent about that set of tracks with someone taking very small steps? About a foot at a time.
Well, if you look at those impressions and you try to reenact that as one set of impressions, stepping left and then right and covering every one of those, you would, I don't know how to describe it, but you would look like, unlike anybody that normally walks or runs, you would be dancing around.
Well,
So,
supposing I step right over here into some blood,
yes.
right? And I walk this way. That way?
No,
What's wrong with that?
because in that case, you're giving a consistent pattern of left, right, even though they're close together.
So you conclude that not only because they're close together, but because of the irregularity of the stepping pattern.
I'm looking at impressions that are where you have two lefts and two rights. You can say if this left goes with this right, which is a couple feet later, it goes with this left, which goes a couple feet later, so on. Then you're left these other ones. And even though you can't say for certain, matching every footprint in sequence to others, I can see enough in those impressions that tells me there were two separate travelings of one person from that scene westward.
Okay. Can you identify any of the identified footprints and tell me which trip made them in your scenario?
I wasn't asked to do that. If given the proper time, I could go back and possibly show corresponding features of one with another. That gets into an area of, as we mentioned, or as I mentioned at the beginning of answering these questions, I don't purport to be able to reconstruct exactly what happened, but physical evidence can rule out certain possibilities, and my knowledge of these shoes and of what people do at crime scenes with shoes enables me to say certain things, and that's been our discussion. But to go back and say with certainty in every case, this impression preceded this impression and so forth, if asked to do that, I might be able to reconstruct some of that, but probably not all of it.
Okay. And in any event, would be unable to say whether a given footprint was from trip 1 or trip 2.
That's correct. No, I wouldn't be able to tell trip 1 from trip 2.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the shoes. You got what one might call a fair degree of cooperation from the company that made them, did you not?
Quite a bit of cooperation, yes, sir.
Broderick?
Pardon?
Mr.
Mr. Bruderich and Mr. Lumi in Italy, and the Silga and 4C factories were extremely cooperative, yes.
Now, as you trace the manufacture and distribution of these shoes, insofar as the United States is concerned, only this sole was on Bruno Magli's, correct?
No,
The two types.
There was the Lorenzo and the Lyon, Lyon, which both had the same soles, and the only difference being the higher heel counter, or heel versus the cutaway one.
As you showed us this morning.
Yes,
Every pair of Lorenzo and Lyon Bruno Magli's had that same sole, correct?
that's correct.
From what you were informed
In the
of.
distribution in 1991 and 92 in this country.
Were they made in 91 and 92 or distributed in those years?
The distribution was in those years.
Okay. And only those 2 years, right?
They're selling them again, I believe, as of this February or March. Not exactly like this, but I believe it is also called a Lorenzo, and I think it's more in a pebble grain. I haven't seen it, but I think it's a pebble grain type shoe with the same Silga sole.
It is the same sole.
Yeah, it's from the same molds. I don't know if it's the same color, but it's the same from the same mold.
But to the best of your knowledge, from 1992 until the date of the crime, June 12, 1994, none were made or distributed, right?
Not in this country.
Okay. There was a European version called Lord, was it?
Lord, L-O-R-D, yes.
And that's what you learned by conferring with your colleagues in Tokyo, correct?
Well, and I confirmed that at the Silga factory, and in fact, they provided me with their distribution of the soles to other companies in Europe, who then sold the shoe in Europe, primarily Italy. And I contacted them to determine if any Lord shoes were sold in the United States. And as thorough as I could be, since a couple factories did go out of business and there was no one to contact, as thorough as I could be, no one had any records of selling any Lord shoes in the United States.
All right, so you're pretty well satisfied that wherever those shoes may now be, they are Bruno Magli's.
Well, the likelihood is there. I certainly can't rule out the possibility that someone went to Europe and Italy and bought a pair of ones with Lord on it and came back to the United States, but there wouldn't be a great number of those.
If they were purchased in the United States by
If-
whomever, they would be Bruno Magli's, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, by the way, you told us this morning when you showed us a certain table where you can give a range of heights for shoe sizes, that's kind of an approximate situation.
Oh, certainly. The purpose of that, of the chart that I prepared, was simply to show that the taller you get, the bigger your foot is, therefore the bigger the shoe is. It's simply a correlation.
Generally speaking.
Yes,
There are prominent exceptions all the time, are there not?
absolutely.
Mr. Douglas, would you stand up, please? Can you estimate his height and weight and tell me what size you think his shoe ought to be?
I can't estimate his height from up here, no.
Okay, well, would you assume that he's about 5'10", 170 pounds?
How tall are you?
5'9".
Well, he looks like he's probably about at least 5'10", maybe 5'11".
Well, that's just a haircut.
You've got raised heels on, so I don't know if you if you're.
I hadn't asked you. Take a look at Mr. Douglas' feet. Tell me what size they are.
They're pretty long and narrow. They're probably, well, can I walk up and look at them closer?
Sure.
Yeah.
You can meet halfway.
They're pretty long. They're probably 12 or 13.
That's a little off the chart, isn't it?
Well, I said that was based on 399 males, and it was just to show correlation, and I readily admit that there's exceptions, sure.
Okay. And you're working with a single size when you give that range, are you not? In other words, you said a 12 on this chart is so many inches to so many inches.
The purpose of the chart was just to show that a person, the general range of height of a person with a size 12.
As I understand it, you never did get a response to your request, a factual response, with details to inventory Mr. Simpson's shoe arena.
Ask the answer.
Overruled.
I never received any additional shoes, no.
Would it surprise you that in his shoe closet there are sizes as small as 10.5 and as large as 13, all of which he wears?
Not at all. In fact, in my book, I cite that very example where my shoes range from 8 to 10, and I normally wear a 9.
Okay. So the fact that these Bruno Magli's happen to be a 12 might fit different people of different sizes because manufacturers are not precise in their sizing. Isn't that a fair statement?
What I was saying is that we could not eliminate Mr. Simpson. He is a candidate based on these shoes as the wearer of a size 12 Bruno Magli shoe, and we're saying nothing more.
Okay.
For the
Not,
record, when
excuse me.
he shoes, he gestured towards the Reeboks.
Yes.
Yes. None of your impressions gave any indication as to weight. That's my impressions in the
There's no valid way to do that, sir.
Okay. So that all that you say when you say someone is a candidate is they could have worn those shoes that night,
That's correct.
even if they were much too big.
Well, I'm saying that I believe they are the same, as when I held them up together, the same size
12.
and interior as well as exterior, and that if Mr. Simpson wore these shoes, then they would be shoes he would possibly wear a size 12 Bruno Magli.
Well, how many people, statistically, could fit into those shoes?
Well, there it could fit, and you brought up the point earlier, a person with a size 9 could wear them. They certainly wouldn't fit good. They'd be stumbling all over the place, but could they put them on? Yes. So you're asking a question which I can't give a definitive answer to. Obviously, even a size 12, over 9% of the population is a size 12, so a lot of people.
How many 11s and 13s?
I don't know the exact percentages for those.
Many more people, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And are you saying that a person with a size 8 or 9 foot who tied those shoes on and laced them up would be necessarily stumbling all over himself?
Yeah, because I've tried that.
With these shoes?
Yeah.
And you fell on your face?
I didn't fall on my face, but I was trying to commit a crime. I'd never feel comfortable doing that. I wouldn't be running down a sidewalk or even trying to get somewhere in a hurry with that. I know of one possible case in over 20 years where this happened, and a person wore his brother's shoes, and I don't think it was to throw anybody off. I think he didn't have any shoes. So and it became quite evident what happened because the brother was on a naval, I think, ship out in the Pacific, and they knew it couldn't be him. So it's just a rare occasion. You can say hypothetically, could it happen, but it doesn't happen as a matter of regular practice.
So your experience is that criminals just aren't smart enough to wear oversized shoes to mislead the police. Is that right?
My experience is that shoes are a personal item of clothing, and people generally wear shoes that are theirs, except for socioeconomic reasons or hand-me-downs of brothers and things of that nature. An adult who is affluent enough to purchase their own shoes generally regards their shoes as their own, and those are the shoes they wear. I can't rule out the hypotheticals that you're postulating because common sense dictates there's no basis for ruling that out. As a matter of practice, in my experience, this just doesn't happen except in rare, rare occasions.
In the 40% of cases where no shoes were recovered for matching purposes, as is the case here, then you have no information as to whether the perpetrator was wearing his correct size or a larger one, correct?
Only based on my experience of the other 60%,
Right.
which is what I've just said.
But the 60%, you said, were people who wore their own shoes to the crime.
which is pretty representative over a 20-year period of time. It's, if you were to ask people in general whether they typically loan out their shoes, men's athletic shoes, men's casual shoes, they generally don't unless there's mitigating circumstances.
I'm not talking about loaning anything. I'm saying that in the 40% you didn't recover, for all you know, someone deliberately wore the wrong size.
I can't rule the possibility out. I'm just saying it is not something I normally encounter.
You know that killers who premeditate often disguise themselves, do you not, one way or another?
I'm sorry, who meditate?
Premeditated killers,
Premeditated.
people planning a murder, will
Yes.
often try to disguise themselves, will wear gloves.
People are much more aware of fingerprints than they are of footprints, and they're much more aware of personal identification of a face, and they wear masks. They are far, far less cognizant of hiding their feet, and the hands and face don't normally have personalized articles of clothing that they wear on them. The shoes are personalized articles of clothing. People like to wear their own shoes.
And so far as you know, despite the fact that long before you got on the scene, criminals were being identified by their footprints, you think it's not a subject of their concern. Is that right?
I'm surprised it's not. I'm surprised it's not, but it isn't.
All right. Well, let's get to the Bruno Mali shoes. These shoes were made in part by a company called UMA in Italy.
UMA,
UMA, or whatever.
Bruno Mali makes them in Italy. I mean, there's a, I don't know the exact correct terminology for who owns what, but Bruno Mali in the United States purchased them through a Bruno Mali representative in Italy. I don't know exactly where the UMA initials come in, if that's a separate company and he owns them both, or if it's related to the Bruno Mali.
But two different companies make two different parts of the shoe, which are joined, and a finished product is produced.
That's correct.
And you attempted through the executives in the company to learn everything you could about these two styles of shoes. How many were made, when they were made, where they were shipped, et cetera, correct?
That's correct.
And particularly once you learned that 46 would fit the blood pattern, which I assume was after you went to the factory and obtained all your exemplar soles.
Actually, the soles were shipped to me prior to that, and the trip was to confirm that and learn more about how the American size 12 last was used, and to assure that they didn't use other size lasts or put other sizes on it. That was the purpose of the trip.
And you satisfied yourself that they did not.
Yes.
And you learned that they did not ship Bruno Mali shoes of this type to any other country, correct?
Oh, no, they could have sold Bruno Mali shoes to other countries. I just couldn't find a tracing of it. In other words,
All right. The ones that came to America came through Mr. Guterich in New Jersey.
yes.
That was the sole distribution point for the U.S.
His distribution, as I understand it, covers North America, South America, the Caribbean, and the United States. And I believe these were the 40 stores he distributed it to them. Whether Bruno Mali sold that sole in Europe through one of those other Italian factories, what names might have been on those shoes produced in Italy, I didn't pursue that. I was only inquiring as to those people as to whether or not any of their shoes, regardless of whether they were Bruno Mali or Lord or whatever, were shipped otherwise to the United States, other than the ones that Peter Gruderich sold.
Okay. Did he, if you know, drop ship to other countries, or did he physically get the shoes and reship?
All I know is that he told me he was the owner of that design, that they were only on Bruno Mali's, and that all of the shoes that were sold in the United States were distributed by him. As to how he did the distribution, drop ship or whatever, I didn't determine that.
During the years 91 and 92, do you know how many pair of Bruno Mali shoes, period, were imported through Mr. Gruderich into the United States, forgetting Canada and South America?
Of any design?
No.
Of
These
this
two.
design?
These two.
I only know for size 12, there were a total of 299 size 12s only that were shipped, that were distributed throughout the United States.
Were any returned, if you know?
Well, obviously, these two, one of these is a 12, so we're down to 298. And I would imagine that there were some which, I know there were some which were returned and like sold as reduced prices through stores like Sims. And whether there were any left over, I asked him about that, and I believe he told me about 3% is a typical average, but he didn't know the exact number in this case.
Okay. What did these shoes run at retail before they were devalued in the secondary stores?
The price tag that's still in one of these shoes says $160.
Okay. That's fairly expensive for a pair of shoes, wouldn't you say?
Yes, sir.
How many different stores actually received a shipment of a size 12 shoe according to the records of Mr. Guterich?
How many stores? There were a total of 40 stores in the United States, including one in Puerto Rico.
And how many did each one receive, if you know?
Well, I'd have to, there's a large list I have that breaks that down by date that goes through, but in most cases, the shipments were one pair at a time to these stores, and then maybe
I'm just very upset I missed the whole streaking. I'm just very upset that I was driving in a car when we were talking about streaking. Finally, it was my time to shine, and I missed it completely.
6 months later, as they replenished their stock, they would order another size 12, and this happened 3 or 4 shipments over a 2-year period to each store. So most stores didn't carry more than one size 12 at one time, although a few stores did.
Okay. Would you tell the court and jury where these stores are located in the United States?
Yeah, I'd have to refer to my
If you
notes.
would, yeah.
Okay, there's 40 of them. Would you like me to just give the cities or the names of the stores, or?
Just give me the cities for a moment.
Okay, of course, some of these, I'll say New York more than one time, so
Sure.
let me just read down the list. Huntington, New York, New York, New York, West Orange, New Jersey, Highland Village, Jackson, Mississippi, Chicago, Illinois, Dearborn, Michigan, Troy, Michigan, Chevy Chase, Maryland, Hackensack, New Jersey, Yonkers, New York, Charleston, West Virginia, Newton Center, Massachusetts, Jacksonville, Florida, Madison, Wisconsin, Phoenix, Arizona, Costa Mesa, California, San Francisco, California, Norwalk, Connecticut, El Paso, Texas, Decatur, Illinois,
Go Pennsylvania.
North Miami Beach, Florida, Bellevue, Washington, Orlando, Florida, Denver, Colorado, Secaucus, New Jersey, a second store in Secaucus, New Jersey, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, New York, New York, Dallas, Texas, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, again, New York, New York, Chicago, Illinois, Frontenac, Missouri, Westfield, New Jersey, again, New York, New York, Secaucus, New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Burlington, Massachusetts, San Juan, Puerto Rico, Guernsey, Illinois.
That's all.
Yes.
So in California, there was one in Costa Mesa, one in San Francisco. I thought I heard one other.
2 in California.
2 in California. Many in New York. Fair statement.
That's correct.
These big chains mostly, or the small individualized stores?
Some Saks, Bloomingdale's were some of the bigger stores in New York. And Saks is all over the country.
Right. I think you told us on direct examination that an effort was made to find out whether there was any record of any sale to Mr. Simpson.
An effort was made by our FBI office in Los Angeles. It was directed by the FBI office and in conjunction with the LAPD homicide unit.
Okay. And is it your understanding that each of the stores was visited and the records checked?
It's my understanding that was done, and I don't have firsthand knowledge of exactly how that was handled and what the results were. I just presume that if we had located something, I would have known about that.
So far as you know, it's all negative, right?
At this point, yes, sir.
Now, was anything other than records checked in order to find out if Mr. Simpson was a fan of Bruno Malley's shoe?
I know there were efforts made to that. I don't have personal knowledge of that, so I may be erroneous if I were to speculate on what that might be.
Okay. Well, as against the ordinary purchase by Joe Average, there's a little edge when trying to find out whether Mr. Simpson bought something, is there not?
I wasn't actively participating in that effort. I just provided the information, so I don't know if there was or wasn't.
You don't know if somebody went to the salespeople who would have been working when these shoes were in stock and said, do you remember the Jukes?
It's my understanding that
He doesn't know.
when they
No
covered
problem.
this lead, that they were purposely not mentioning that there was no mention made of Mr. Simpson, or they were simply trying to reconstruct the records to find all of the shoes.
Wouldn't it have been helpful to find a witness who said, I'll never forget the day I showed O.J. Simpson a pair of Bruno Malley?
Sustained.
I didn't get the ruling on it.
Sustained.
Okay, fine. All right, the long and the short of it is that no one has located any store where it is claimed that Mr. Simpson bought such shoes. True? Your understanding?
Based on their records that apparently aren't very good that many years later, that's correct.
Were there any marks that could have come from shoes at the scene of the crime, and once again I'm referring to the rather specific area around the bodies, that could have represented the footprints of other soles, not the one that we've been dealing with?
None that I'm aware of that were in blood.
All right.
And Actually, none of any other type that I'm aware of, that I was given photographs of.
Okay. Were there any partial prints that might have come from a different sole?
None which I saw, other than, back to the ones at the end of the walkway that were indistinct. I couldn't theoretically rule that out, but I don't believe that was the case.
Okay. And the white envelope that you inspected earlier, the glasses envelope,
Yes.
do you or do you not say that that partial print is from the Silga sole?
Well, there's some features in common between it. It's so partial, I can't link it to that specific, a specific size, but it does match the parallel border and the design element of that sole.
You can't rule it in or rule it out, right?
Well, it looks like that sole. If it was a different design, it would have to be one just like the Silga sole with
So we
regard to that
can
that
roll it
small
in,
part.
Sir.
Are you making an identification or not?
I'm saying that it's consistent with another shoe that has made impressions all over the sidewalk and in blood, and it's also in that envelope, and in as much as the parallel border and that design element match, I would say that that same shoe also made the impression on the envelope. I would see nothing there to draw attention to a different design of shoe.
All right. Now, there was another piece of white paper, which I understand is missing. Did you examine another piece of white paper with some kind of impression on it at some point?
Assumes facts not made, sir.
Oh, well. From the Bundy scene?
Yeah.
No, there were two pieces of paper, I think from the Bronco or Rockingham, but not from the Bundy scene.
Did you examine any impression evidence that came from Rockingham?
There was a piece of paper that, it's hard for me to tell where, it's my understanding it was Rockingham. I saw photographs of a vehicle, and there was a piece of paper next to it. I don't know where that photograph, from my personal knowledge, was taken, but it possibly was Rockingham. And I examined that piece of paper, and then there was a piece of paper that was in the Bronco of the defendant. And of course, that Bronco was at times at Rockingham, so I don't know if you would want to call that from Rockingham or from wherever they found it at the time.
Well, the answer
So
is,
the answer is
the answer
yes,
is
I guess.
responsive, but I had more in mind the walkway, the driveway, the
Oh, no,
interior of the
no.
house, and so forth.
None was submitted to me.
Mr. Bozia, you're going to have to allow Mr. Bailey to finish
sorry.
asking the question.
Assume that someone who had worn the extrinsic blood off the lower part of the sole, that is the part that contacts the concrete, as you said, would eventually happen,
Yes.
then walks on a carpet. Isn't there still some blood likely to be damp enough to transfer that the carpeting would catch by getting up inside the pattern? So that is to say, whereas a flat concrete surface just makes this contact. As you pointed out before, you could get a reverse contact if a bunch of hairs went up in between the pattern.
That's correct.
True. Did you ever see any evidence from the Simpson home in that respect?
No, I did not.
Okay. Do you know if any was ever looked for?
I couldn't answer that question. I don't have personal knowledge of what people were doing at the crime scene.
Okay. Were you ever asked to view any photographs of impressions lifted from his driveway, the street near his home, his walkway, etc.?
To my knowledge, none were found.
Okay. Is it fair to say that most of the impressions that you examined are on that board today, either identifiable or not identifiable?
That's correct.
Excuse me a minute, Ron. With respect to your examination of the photographs of the Bronco, which you enhanced in two ways, I believe, but the second time you photographed in daylight and showed it.
The carpeting you're referring to.
My understanding is there is insufficient detail present to call it one way or the other as to those marks, whether they're a footprint or not, in the Bronco.
I couldn't associate him with the Silga sole, yes.
Now, Mr. Bozia, you made a statement in response to a question of Mr. Goldberg's that one kind of criminal who is attached to his shoes is likely to take them home, and sometimes they're recovered, but sometimes they help capture him.
I don't think that was the summary of what I said.
Well, you had a 60-40 breakdown, and the 40 were the more likely to destroy their shoes. That's what captured my interest.
I think that states the best.
But
Well, Mr. Boziak, I think, can handle this question.
That was based on the submissions to our laboratory. What I said previously about the bloody impressions was of the shoes, of the cases involving shoes where the suspect purposely got rid of the clothing and bloody shoes were, in fact, in overwhelmingly most cases, those where they saw the blood on their shoes, they saw the blood on their clothing, and anybody would know that that was incriminating, and they would therefore very
okay.
quickly get rid of the clothing.
Watching OJ.
Even then, in some cases, we have people go back, throw the clothes in the wash the shoes, and we've actually recovered shoes from people that were still wet. But in most cases with bloody clothing, it's very obvious that they have to get rid of the clothes and the shoes because it's incriminating evidence.
And in order to be able to dispose of the accoutrements of murder, that is bloody shoes, clothes, and maybe a weapon, there must be an opportunity, must there not?
That would be common sense, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Goldberg, any redirect?
Yes, I did see that. Mr. Wozniak,
Let this guy
you were
go.
asking questions about crime scene processing type issues. Can you just briefly indicate for us what additional experience you have in the area of crime scene processing exclusively as it relates to collection of shoe print evidence?
Well, the function of the laboratory that I work in, the FBI lab, is not primarily to respond to crime scenes, but I have on occasion responded to crime scenes. In addition, perhaps the biggest summary of crime scene efforts that I see is in the casework that's submitted to me, namely the photographs, the casts, lifts, and other evidence which relates to shoes. And then talking to the investigators, seeing general photographs of the scene, reading about the circumstances of the scene. So to that effort, I have a great deal of experience in understanding what is normally retrieved and normally found at crime scenes and what efforts are normally successful and what efforts are not.
Have you also taught people how to do crime scene investigation in the area of shoe print analysis?
That's one of the most common requests which I get, and I've been doing it steadily since 1982.
And have you tested various techniques for searching for shoe prints and also recovering shoe prints?
Yes, any materials or methods which are new, we immediately obtain to see if they're better than what might have been existing before and to see if they work.
Okay. Now, breaking down the Bundy Drive location into some discrete components, I want to ask you some questions about searching and retrieving shoe prints. Directing your attention to what we've referred to in this case as being the caged-off area, the area north of where Q67 and Q68 was located. If you arrived at the crime scene at night, what kind of technique would be used in order to search for shoe prints in the soil in this area?
The technique would be to use what we call an oblique light source, and the word oblique simply refers to the light being held low to the ground and grazing the ground, and that helps in determining the depressed areas versus the non-depressed areas, and it basically visualizes the shoe prints better.
And can you give us an example of what an oblique light source would be?
An oblique light source could be anything from a sophisticated
My other neighbor
high
came over
intensity
and was talking, and I couldn't
light
tell
source that
them, shut up, I gotta
generates
go.
a lot of light, and you'd have to plug in
I was
somewhere.
trying to get them away.
And on the other end, you would probably see just natural sunlight in the morning grazing the ground, or a flashlight grazing the ground, and any of these would be suitable for finding these impressions.
And then I drove
Obviously,
my
the ones
daughter to
with
work. I
more
drive
light
her to work
intensity
every
would
morning.
show them up
I leave my
better,
stream
but you
every
could also
day.
see them with the other methods.
Drive my daughter to work
High-intensity flashlight
and
would
come back.
qualify.
If used properly, yes.
And by properly, you mean by shining it at an oblique angle across the area?
Yes, by grazing the surface and looking for impressions in that area. Yep.
So if detectives did a search of the
Every day I drive my daughter to work. Every day during OJ I leave for a while and come back. But this morning, before that, my neighbor came over and was talking, and I couldn't just say, yo, you gotta shut up and leave. So my neighbor directly to the right of me, his father has lived there for many, many, many years. Was elderly. He passed away in February, I think. And his son moved in, who is well older than me. The son is well older than me. So he doesn't really know anybody. So he came over, and he was talking to me for a while. And then I had to leave right away to take my daughter to work. So that's why I was gone for a while today. But we've had enough of shoes for one day. We're going to end OJ here. Tomorrow we're going to do the prosecutor and the defense from the other trial before we come back into shoes. Thank you so much for coming out, guys. I really appreciate it. I will see you all again tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.